Good afternoon. My name is Dilly MacFarlane, and this is the Alumni Special. Today I'm happy to welcome as my guest the new artistic director for the 1987 season of the Mount Playhouse, Deb Allen. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Dilly.
Thanks for coming by.
You're welcome.
Deb, I wanted to ask you a few questions about your own personal background in theatre. I know you got off to a very early start with your involvement with theatre. How old were you when you saw your first play?
Well, I think probably about 3, although that's often denied by other family members, but my parents were both very keen theater goers, and I can remember going on trips to New York with them to see musicals and regular dramas on stage, and that was a great thrill, and it seemed to be in my blood, and away I went, and I've never looked back.
Really? Well, now you grew up in Halifax.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in my early years in Halifax, and I did a lot of theater work at QEH when I went to school there. And then on to university later, a little work at Dal and some at St. Mary's, where they have a very fine involvement in theatre. There was a very dedicated society with a lot of professional people who had input and were a great influence on me and a lot of other students at that time. Most of the kids that I went through St. Mary's with, actually, if I think of the list, have now gone on to professional theatre.
Interesting. Now, when did you start working with Neptune? I understand that was at a very early age.
Well, I was very bold in grade 12 and went down to Neptune and wanted to see Mr. Major, who was the artistic director, and I had to see somebody else, and spoke with a gentleman I think was the production manager at the time, and said that I thought they ought to hire me, that I was really energetic. I was almost like Judy Garland in one of the Andy Hardy movies, you know, I want to put on a play, I want to do everything. And
so what did
they
you do?
said, well, come aboard, we'll pay you $15 a week, you can fill the actors' parking meters out on Argyle Street, because they were always getting tickets, run down to the corner, get coffee. And of course this let me sit in on rehearsals, because I had to sit right next to Leon Major and, you know, be at his beck and call. I was one of the theatre gophers. And then gradually he realized I was kind of reliable and I'd be there, so he let me sit on the prompt book and call out cues to people while they were still learning lines. And it went on from there, and I got to do, well, they gave me apprenticing duties in all the areas of the theatre, which was
great.
And, you know, better than a training program.
So did you actually go for professional training after?
Yeah, I wanted to go to the National Theatre School in Montreal, and I was refused there. They have different ideas about who they want at different times, and they were looking for willowy, beautiful young women with long hair, and I didn't exactly qualify. I was funny and short. And they weren't looking for that type for, they did that for about a 3 or 4 year period, and they really wanted ingenue types. So I went off to Toronto and studied under a Nova Scotia Talent Trust grant, which I'd won. And I took acting and dance and voice up there.
So what brought you back to the Maritimes, Deb?
I think I missed the ocean.
I'm sure.
You know, I spent a few hot summers in Toronto, and it's really a huge market there, and when you're young and inexperienced, you know, I had a lot of opportunity in TV. I did a lot of small bits in television and stuff, but I was lonely for the Maritimes, and I felt like coming home and seeing what was happening here. And I went back to university. When I came back, I was a real late bloomer, and that's when I got to do my work with the Drama Society. So
when you came back to the Maritimes, it was with a mind to having a professional career in theatre? Yeah, I thought also that I was going to be smart and take some academic training, and maybe I could be a qualified teacher and teach what I love to do and make a decent living instead of trying to find acting roles and things. And have you been teaching? I did a bit of teaching, but I branched out into broadcasting, radio and television work, and I did that for a number of years, and that took me to PEI, and I sort of got my calling again in PEI because people kept urging me into theatrical things. Would I do a little directing? And I was terrified. I'd never done any. And over the last 7 years, I've done quite a bit of that. Tell me about some of the projects that you've been involved with, Deb, over the last 7 years. Well, there have been some really interesting ones. For the last number of summers, about 3 summers, I've worked at the King's Playhouse in Georgetown, PEI, which has had a strong history of theatre there. The building that we performed in initially was one that was put up in about 1887. And people like Sarah Bernhardt had reputedly played there. Houdini had locked himself into trunks there. Oscar Wilde had done a reading tour there. So it was steeped in all sorts of history, and it was a wonderful place to do summer seasons. And then during the winter months, I worked with a professional company called ICT Performance Group. And they were the island's Neptune almost. I mean, the closest thing to a professional, you know, resident professional company that happens in PEI. So have you had an area of specialization, for instance, musical theater or Have you been tending toward the more dramatic end of things?
Well, I think I love music, and you know, I've done a little bit of musical theater over there with the Confederation Center close by. You can't not be involved. But basically, I've done straight drama, you know, comedies. I mean, non-musicals is what I should say, not straight drama.
Okay, let's get down to it. Tell me about the 1987 season of the Mount Playhouse. Everybody's dying to know what's going to happen.
Well, I can tell you because it's all set now.
Great.
We luckily got the rights to an Italian play called We Won't Pay, We Won't Pay, which is a contemporary farce by a very funny Italian man called Dario Fo. His whole background is as a clown and playwright and performer. And this is a funny, funny script. It's just a madcap farce, and everybody will love it, you know. And there's some political slams in there, too, you know, talking about unions and a little poke at religion. I mean, he gets a slap at everybody, but I think the audience will enjoy it no end because we've laughed our heads off in the read-throughs and auditions that we've had people like the material.
Oh, that's great.
So it's a very lively piece. And it's a little bit of a departure because I think in the past seasons I haven't seen how the Playhouse runs exactly, but this piece will be a little longer, so people will come and have dinner, a leisurely dinner, and then they'll sit down to a full evening of theater.
I see. So this will be in, what, 2 acts?
Yes.
In 2 acts, I see. Oh, that'll be interesting. How many characters are in the play?
5 in that play.
Oh, so it'll be a busy one.
And this may be giving away a bit, but one of the 5 actors plays a number of roles. But it's sort of a running gag in the show.
Right.
It's fun. Then the other piece is a new show called Coleslaw. I say new because it's new to Halifax audiences, unless they happen to see it. It was performed in PEI one summer, briefly, and then it was done as a benefit originally. A friend of mine created the show, and it's Cole Porter music from 1929 to 1940.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
And it's really fun, so we're just talking now about costuming it and setting it up. So.
Right. Now, how this year the Playhouse, the regular 3-night-a-week format is going to undergo a slight change, I understand.
Yes, it's just 2 nights a week this year. We're going to offer the Italian farce that I spoke of on Wednesday nights, and then the other will happen on Friday evenings. And we're still going to invite people to stay around afterward, and we'll roll the sets back, and people can dance and enjoy the atmosphere of the pub. It's a gorgeous room there, and I love the glassed, the opened-up sliding doors looking out over the woods.
Oh, it's marvelous. And on a summer's evening, there's nothing really quite as refreshing as going out for a breath of fresh air after dinner and before the play. Deb, I understand that the Mount Playhouse is, for this year and last year, is facing quite a stiff competition from theater groups in the city, professional theater groups that have sprung up more or less in the wake of the Mount Playhouse. I'm interested to know how you plan to compensate for that competition this year.
Well, from just what I've learned about the history of the Mount Dinner Theatre, it was the first one, the first and only game in town for a while, and I think it has a loyal following. And I think also that just our setting, you know, the physical setting of the place, the way the evening is laid out, regular goers know that they can come have a nice leisurely cocktail hour if they like. There's sometimes a little bit of entertainment at that time. Then they sit down to a lovely dinner, you know, in very pleasant surroundings, beautiful service. Our menus this year are going to be
you just took the question right out of my head. Of course, when you think of dinner theater, the theater part we've discussed to a certain extent. What is the food going to be like this year?
Well, we're going for a theme in a way. I mean, the Italian farce night, we've talked with the chef and we're still negotiating the menus and so on. But we want to go for strictly Italian food so that we'll have a nice salad like a Caesar perhaps, and then we'll move on to some delicious Italian entree and then maybe some spumoni for dessert.
Oh, doesn't that sound lovely?
And then there'll be Italian wines available and that kind of thing, so you can have a really nice evening. And it's cheaper than a ticket to Italy, you know, cheaper than airfare.
That's true.
It's only $24 a night. So.
What about the Cole Porter night? How will you tie in the menu to that evening, to
well,
that
we thought we might go for fish that night.
Oh,
something
Friday
light.
night.
On a nice warm summer evening. I'm presuming that this summer's going to be wonderful. Every night's going to be sunny to make up for the horrible one we had last year.
Well, you know, actually, we didn't have such bad luck with the Playhouse last year. Usually the weather cooperated to a certain extent, but I think that probably the tourists will be most interested in coming to the Mount on a Friday night to hear some Cole Porter and to eat some good
Yeah, I think that'll get people in the mood, and then after the Cole Porter show is over, we're going to roll back the set and people can stay and dance and have a nightcap or whatever they'd like to do. So it's a nice way to spend the evening, and I think that's the appeal to the Mount Playhouse, whereas the other places are all, wonderful entertainment. Every one of them has a different something to offer, and I think maybe that's the key. They know just as well as we do that you have to have a different motif or a different something that's special.
A hook.
Yeah, a hook.
Yeah, right. Well, aside from the artistic elements that we've been talking about, the food and the music and the plays themselves, I understand that you're taking responsibility for a lot of the production work that'll be going on as well. How are you going to put it together this year, Deb? Have you got lots of volunteers?
Well, so far I've had a number of people, show an interest, no doubt, and there's a long list of people who've helped in the past, and we're going to call on those people again to give us a hand.
Right. So when will you start? Have you cast the part so far?
I'm still in the throes of doing that because I'm going to have callbacks and see people
Great.
again, make my final choices.
Yes,
But we'll be getting underway, I guess, just after convocation.
right.
Because
So
it's
that
so
will
busy
be
here.
Around the second week in May.
Yeah,
So you'll start rehearsals in the long weekend in May,
probably so.
and opening.
We'll be opening the first show July 3rd, and the second show opens July 8th.
Oh, I see. And you'll be running until.
August 14th is our last, 12th and 14th is our last show. So the season will go by. It's only 13 nights this year as opposed to 19 in the past.
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, that sounds exciting and like a lot of work,
It
too.
sounds soon. I think I better go now.
I'm sure you've got lots to do. How do people get involved, Deb, if they want to participate, other than as a member of the audience?
Well, I guess I could leave my phone number and hope that I'll have my answering machine hooked up soon so that people won't call and get no answer. It's 422-2605, and they can talk to me, or they could drop by if, this won't be aired in time for me to say this, but I was going to say we're having a get-together this Saturday night at 8:30 from 8:30
this is
to
the
12.
the recruiting party. Well, that's a wonderful way to recruit help, is to throw a party, which I understand the Playhouse is very much like a big party all summer
Oh, it
long.
is.
Yeah.
And that's the reward for people who get involved. Since nobody gets paid, it's the socializing and meeting new friends and just spending time together. It's
Well,
great.
Deb, just from my experience with the Mount Playhouse troupe, I envy you the experience that you're going to undergo this summer. They're wonderful people, and I'm sure that they're going to benefit greatly from your leadership this year.
I know they've benefited from yours in the past, so you've made it, so.
Well, look, I'm going to say break a leg, and that's meant with all sincerity. And if anybody's looking for further information on the Mount Playhouse, you can call Deb at 422-2605, or you can call Mount St. Vincent University and ask for information on the Mount Playhouse. So, before I leave, I'm going to thank you again, Deb, and perhaps I'll get you back sometime in the fall, and we'll talk about how the season went.
Just how it went, yeah.
And some ideas for next year. And until then, this is Dilly MacFarlane. I'm saying goodbye to you today from the Alumni Special.